Is the sports card hobby on its last legs? With skyrocketing prices, flippers dominating the market, and a landscape evolving faster than ever before, many collectors feel as though the heart of the hobby is changing, meaning like the feel of the hobby is changing. But is this really the end, or is this just the start of a new era? Meaning like how a new era started, back in the 70s and 80s, and then change, and then the 90s change, and then going on from there. In this video, I'm going to try to dive into all of this aspect and even in the so-called death of the traditional sports card collecting, and also explore what the future holds for the hobby in 2025 and beyond. Whether you are a longtime collector, whether you are a new time collector, or you're new to the game, this is a conversation that you don't want to miss. And again, if you're when you're doing this, you can always send in the comments what you guys think, and we'll get back to you because you love talking to you guys. The first thing I wrote down was how challenges are facing sports card collectors. And there's challenges outside right now when it's snowing and I'm driving in the snow, right? But how are challenges, in the sports card field, and how are they affecting collectors? You have a lot of aging demographics. And what does that mean, demographics? What does aging demographics mean? How are younger generations, how are they being engaged? I think right now how they're being engaged is like breakers, and how breakers are bringing in this younger generation, this younger TikTok audience, and they're bringing these people in, and they're going after these big hits and these big things, and it's always big, 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 big. Whereas back in the 70s and the 60s and the 80s and 90s, it was just like trying to get your favorite card, trying to get that Bo Jackson, trying to get that Wayne Gretzky, trying to get that Eric Lindros, trying to get that Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, whatever that could be. And collecting it just for the sake of collecting. And it's kind of changing now. And sometimes that could be a good thing. Sometimes that could not be a bad thing. Another thing that is very, very challenging right now that I have seen that you guys have written in the comments a lot, and I have experienced myself, and I'm sure everyone has experienced in one way, shape, or form, is the rising prices. Prior to 2020, blaster boxes were $15, $20. Now they're $40 or $35, depending on what kind of blaster box you get. Cheaper ones are still 25, 30, but it has been going up, and inflation has been going up. And that puts a good, well, not a good thing. That puts a hard thing for the casual collector. How is rising prices, how come I'm going to these stores and I'm finally finding a blaster box, but when did it come out? How long has it been sitting in the shelves? Is it a new box? Is it an old box? And that goes into what we're doing here, Sports Card Hustlers, is we're doing an insider club, like a sports card insider club. Whereas if you sign up and type in insider in the comments, we'll send you a link and you can put your email in there. And every week or so, we're going to send out a list of when these things are coming out. When is this Topps 2025 coming out? When is the NHL Upper Deck Series 2 coming out? And so you guys know exactly when it's happening, because it's very hard to find that stuff online. And when you're looking at that stuff online, it's very hard to compile information in one section. So Comment Insider, that'll help you guys out. That's what we're here for. We're not stealing email addresses. We're not spamming you with email. It'll be like one email every other week, and we'll show you when things are coming out or even when things are getting restocked. And it's very important to the nature of the hobby. So, rising prices goes with that. So, I mean, do you want to get blaster boxes, or do you want to really get, my paper keeps on coming off, right? Or do you really want to get, singles? And singles is probably the way to go, like I said in my last video. But also the impacting of flippers. Flippers meaning like people that go into these places, grab a blaster box for $35 and then sell it for $50 or $60 or whatever that could be. How is that affecting the long term, or how is that the long term effect on the hobby? Like, what is that doing to the overall hobby? You have these short term price surging, and it distorts the long term stability of the hobby. People are trying to find quick products or quick prices or profits, and they're trying to attract attention, and they're also trying to lead, I guess you could say, this leads to inflated card prices, and the values, and it makes it hard for the genuine collectors like you and I to afford these cards that they want, because I'm trying to find a blaster box for $50 and I'm not even getting the cards that I want. So is it passion? Is it just investment anymore? And that might affect a lot of things with the hobby. I'm trying to put this back up here because it keeps on falling off. Sorry. cold and snow, and it kind of holds and it keeps on falling off. So I'm going to try to put it like this, like that. Okay. So how's that involving the hobby? Is it passion over just investment? How does that drive away collectors? Because it is driving away collectors. How things are getting flipped. I'm like, I know I'm not spending $90 for a mega box. Definitely not. So I mean, some people do because they're forced to do that. But it's just a hard sell. And who are in it for the love of the sport, or who are in it just to make money. So you always had that, but I think it's a little bit more to it than now. And that's a lot of challenges that face us as the future of the hobby is in question. And how is that challenge is facing that? If you have any more challenges that you have or want to add, shoot us messages in the comments, definitely, because that'll help us out. But the second thing I wrote down is, what do I mean by death? What does death symbolize? Not like the entire thing's dying and, there's not going to be any sports cards anymore and there's going to be all NFTs. Not really. Not at all. I'm talking about that. I'm just saying death symbolizing it, okay? How is the hobby is not dying, right? But rather, how is it evolving? How is it changing? How are the old ways fading? And like the old ways meaning like, raw or base cards. Like, I didn't get anything graded when I was a kid. Now everybody's getting all these things graded, even base cards graded. And how is that changing the hobby? How is PSA and all the different places, how are they changing the hobby? Is anybody having, base card sets anymore? Some people do, but like we were all trying to do, complete our set. I know there's like when I was a kid, there was like the stickers, like the NHL stickers, and they had a book, and you try to get all the stickers and put them into a set. I don't care how much that sticker was. I was just trying to complete the set. Now it's like, who's collecting sets anymore? I don't really see a lot of people doing that anymore, at least in our comments in our Discord groups or Facebook groups or Reddit groups. It's a lot of people going after the big bang, the card and trying to sell for a pretty good price and make money on it. And that's changing the hobby and how it was back in the 90s and the 80s and the 70s and even the early, even 2000s. So, and, in-person trading is going away. Like the only way we traded was in person back when I was a kid. We would bring cards to school and be like, oh yeah, I want that Bo Jackson. Oh yeah, I want that Ken Griffey Jr. And now it's like you can trade anytime you want. But it's all like online. There's no like in-person stuff. Not a lot. And I'm going to say no, but like 90% is online. You might get trades at sports card shows and things like that. But, that is definitely that's how it's changing. It's how it's evolving, but also meaning by how it is like the death is symbolizing because of these high-end things that are changing. And going into the high-end things, the rise in the high-end, the rise in the grading, even NFTs, that's definitely changing the hobby. Me personally, I don't want to have an NFT online and then have that, right? I'd rather have it in my hands, open it up, and go from there. So, I mean, rising in the high-end and rising in grading, I'm not going to go and grade base cards. That just seems like a waste of time to me, right? But a lot of people do. But having like a Shohei Ohtani base card and then having a graded base card, I mean, that makes, that doesn't do anything for me, right? I just like having the cards and having a collection and then eventually passing it down to my kids. But I mean, if you want to have all graded cards in your collection, go for it, because you can find graded cards online, but they're a little bit more money, and then you're spending, a much as a graded card, base card for $25 compared to buying a $25 blaster box. So it's a little bit different. It's definitely changing the hobby around, right? But not meaning the hobby is dying, but how is it just the symbolization of that? How's technology changing? How will technology affect the future of the hobby? What's going on with the future of the hobby? In 10 years and 20 years, what's going to be the hobby? It's very hard to determine. And I always like, ask my students of what they think, because, they can kind of look into the future a little bit more like as a kid's hobby compared to we can. But it's very important to look into the future and how is it shaping the future? Like there's a lot of things now with AI, but that you have grading automation, whereas, you give the card and the AI helps grade the actual card instead of having the human involvement. Some people have sent cards away and get back like a PSA 7, PSA 8, rip that thing up, send it in there, then to PSA 10. So it's all depending on who's looking at the card, what the QA, QC is happening, what's all that stuff happening, right? But with AI, that might give you a perfect reading of that card, and then it'll be consistent, very consistent compared to if I send it to PSA or if I send it to other, grading card companies that might change things around a lot, in the future, because AI is just going not out of control, but it's over the last year or 2 years, it's getting a little bit more involved than, it was last year, even last month, or even last week. It's getting crazy, right? But even, impacting of, social media, you know, everyone's connected now. Everyone knows what the good card is. And when you see that, everyone wants that good card. Everyone's looking for that Paul Skeens one-on-one. Everyone's looking for the Ellie De La Cruz one-on-one or Jackson Holiday one-on-one. And Ellie De La Cruz got pulled, right? And over $100,000, right? Everyone's thinking they're going to get that. But, technology-wise, that, I guess that makes those cards more well-known instead of like in your little group, in your little school, right? Now it's like worldwide. So now everyone's going after this card, and technology just opens up the doors to all that stuff. So it keeps everyone connected, which is a good thing, but it also drives prices up a lot because now you have a lot of demand and a very, very low supply on a certain number of these cards. So what can be some opportunities, I guess, in 2025 that we can look at to help us out and help us look to the future on where this hobby is going 2025 and the future, 2026, 2027, 2030, 2040. What's going to happen in the future? You're going to have a rise in micro communities. Now, I had to look this up so I can understand this for you guys and help you explain it. But like micro communities are really, they're smaller, like I guess groups, specialized groups, kind of like a community, like a school, like your school group, right? That they focus on areas that are really not broad. And how will that affect the hobby? How will like just going after specific players, going after just rare inserts, going after just moments in history, how will that affect the hobby and just specializing in a certain area? Because as you can see, the hobby has grown so much with parallels, with inserts, with number cards, with autos, and all that stuff that, back in the 90s, there was like, okay, the NHL Pro Set 1990 had all these cards. It has maybe some like all-star cards. Then it had like one Stanley Cup as like an insert. It was like a holograph card. Now it's like, every pack has an insert. Every pack has a parallel. Maybe you're going to see eventually in the years, prior or after this, that you're going to have more people just specializing in like collecting. I know I've been seeing on my Facebook group, somebody was collecting an Alex Verdugo, and he was trying to collect all the chrome Alex Verdugos. And that was his thing that he wanted to collect. And that's a great thing. That's a pretty cool thing. And there's like so many different kind of cards, color cards, numbered cards, and he's trying to collect all that stuff just for his personal collection. You might spend an arm and a leg as that goes on, right? But that's how people are kind of not buying blaster boxes anymore, but just focusing on single cards and single variation cards just for maybe their favorite players or players that are on their favorite sports team or wherever that could be. And that's pretty cool. You can put in like a poster and then post that onto like your wall and have all the different kind of, Bryce Harper collections from the Topps Chrome 2024 and have all the different colors. So that's a pretty cool thing to do. And I think that's going to how you might see some collectors, branch off and go into their like micro communities, or like niche collecting or things like that. You can even focus on obscure players or unique sets or like really, really rookies that didn't even get, you're still in college. You might be able to focus on that. That might have some different opportunities in 2025. Potential for new companies, new people to innovate, with new card designs, new partnerships, new memorabilia. Like I said, just having patch of jerseys. Maybe you have other things, other variations of that, like a piece of a bat or, whatever that could be. Like that can go so broad with things like that, that how it's been growing so broad over the last 4 or 5 years, it might branch off even more than that and have specialized just card sets that are just like insert cards or like just memorabilia cards and things like that. And, they might be out there now, but like even more advanced than that. And, new card designs, Topps owns the market, there's Topps this, there's Topps that, there's Topps this. But maybe like, Onyx was a pack that I never knew about, the Onyx cards. And I got Charlie Condon in there because he was like one of the main draft picks from this year. And he was like hitting a lot of home runs. So I'm like, let me try to get an Onyx pack on eBay. They were like $20. And I got a couple Charlie Condon base cards in there. And I might save them into the future because he might be a pretty good prospect. Mayo from Baltimore, like we saw him play in Baltimore in the AAA or AA stadium. Ironbirds is AA. I think it was AA Ironbirds. And he was a big guy. And we were talking to the guy at Alley Sports, it's in the Ripken Stadium. And he was like, yeah, he's a pretty good player, pretty good prospect. So we were trying to get some of his cards and save him some of them. So like, these guys aren't really well known at all now, but maybe you're trying to get that and focus on that. So that might be a thing that you can focus on. Opportunities for collectors, like opportunities in 2025. How can that shape the narrative? How can educating new people into the hobby and emphasizing fun over profits, how can that, get back to where we used to be back in the 90s and 2000s, 2010s? Because everything now just feels like we're after the big hit and that's it, at least new collectors. So like bringing new collectors in and saying, well, maybe I got this card and this card when I was a kid and we opened up with my parents, and bringing that nostalgia aspect in there. And then when they get older, they'll have the same exact thing. So that might help you out or help them out in the future as well. My last thing, call to action. Changes are happening, and it's our job to embrace the changes at the same time and stick to our roots. Nostalgia is very important. Educate new collectors. You're watching this video, maybe you're like a very, very well-seasoned collector, and like your job now is to educate new collectors and explain the history and how important this hobby is, and focus on community, fun, nostalgia, instead of just treating this as a business and a profit center. But again, make sure that you comment, subscribe, and send us anything that you think of you might want to see, or new videos, or comment on this video and explain some stuff, and we'll get back to you, which is the greatest thing ever. Like nowadays you can do that stuff. And again, join an Insider Club, comment Insider. We'll send you some emails about when things are getting restocked and when things are coming out. And that will be a great thing for you guys to do, because you can just search one area instead of searching 5,000 different areas. But again, we appreciate you guys watching. We'll talk to you guys later. I hope you enjoyed the show. Later. Peace.